And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey everybody, I'm Tom Vasel, and today we're taking a look at a game called Fire and Stone. Now, when I first saw this, gorgeous cover by the way, when I first saw this game I was intrigued by the cover, but also the designer, Klaus-Jürgen Lade, is the designer of Carcassonne. Now, he's designed many other games. None of them has had that same massive effect that Carcassonne has had out there, but he's almost a designer from a different era. I mean, Carcassonne came out 20 years ago, and you know, when I first read the rules for this game, I was like, yeah, this feels like an old-timey game in a sense. One of those games when you had to get the rules translated to even figure out how to play the game. So, still I'm interested in it. You are explorers going around in the known world at the time, which is mostly just this big, giant landmass, and you're going and discovering fire and building settlements and scoring victory points. Here's how it plays. At the beginning of the game, each player has a scout that's going to start here at the bottom of Africa. Each player also has a board here that's going to have a few spots to put things. And in fact, if you are playing with a certain number of players, let's say you're playing with 4 players, you'll actually start with a couple of these edible foods in the bottom spots. Otherwise, those spots are open. And so, turns are pretty simple in this game. On your turn, you move your scout 2 spaces, or up to 2 spaces. You can move 1. You move there. If there's something there, you reveal it. If there's nothing there, you can take 1 food. I should mention that everyone has bags to store their food, so you can store up to 2 food as you go through, and you might get more bags as the game goes by. Well, hopefully you'll get more bags to put more food into. Now, there are different things you can find on these tiles. Sometimes you'll find resources. Resources are useful. There are 4 different resources because if you find the second of a resource and you put it in the same column, you then get to take a technology or a victory point card. So there are technologies up here, and when you take this, you now have a new special ability. This lets you now move on the sea routes. You might have noticed the sea routes that look like they came from the game Risk. Out on the board, this one lets you move 3 spaces instead of 2. This is just a bag that holds 2 more food, and there's lots of different technologies in here. You can also take a victory point card, but you can only take a victory point card if you have a technology because the victory point card covers up the special ability of the technology. So you'll no longer have that special ability, but you now have 4 victory points at the end of the game, although this pile does get less and less and goes down to 1 victory point as the game goes by. Sometimes when you turn a tile over, you just get what's on it. This gives 1 bag and 1 food. So you'll find those, and then those are removed from the game. Sometimes you discover a forest. When you discover a forest, at the bottom of the board are piles of 3 tokens. You'll put those tokens there. Anytime someone goes in the forest, you look at the tokens, and you will take one of these tokens. Now, there's nothing you can do with that token initially, so I might say I'm going to take this 2 food, 2 bags and 1 food. You'll put it on your board. So down here you can see this is where you put your animals, and anytime you stop in a fire space, you can cook as much food as you want. You'll put it down here, and then you get whatever it is. In this case, I would get 2 more bags and 1 food. Hopefully you have enough space to put it. Let's say I've taken this 5 food. Hopefully I have enough bags to put all that in. So the forest tokens, you know, you could move back there in the future and get more, and that will stay there for the rest of the game. Some of the tokens are new fire spots. Fire is a place you can cook things, and also discovering fire gives you 1 victory point, which you'll mark on the track. And then you'll find a spot like this. This is where villages can be built. When you discover it, you'll put one of your huts there, and then you immediately move to a fire spot on the board. So there's one already printed, but again, you can find more as time goes by. You can build more huts in an area. So let's say the player who's playing black goes here. I can build a hut here, but you have to pay 1 food for each hut that's already there. So let's say black came back here in the future. They would put this here, but that would cost them 2 food. Now, as huts are discovered, you're going to place them here on the top of the board. And this is important for a couple reasons. When the 3rd settlement hut is found, players are now allowed to move into the 2 region. And when you get all the way over here to the 9th settlement, you may move into the 3 region. Before that, you may not go to those sections. And when the 5th one's built, everyone is going to get another worker. That person goes to whatever fire of the region you're in, and now on your turn, you're moving 2 people and finding 2 tiles. So that's pretty much it. You're just going to keep doing this till the game ends when the 11th settlement is found. There's one last thing. If you find it's in the level 2, the cave, then the cave card down here is flipped. At the beginning of the game, you're going to put a cave card. There are many different cave cards, but you're only using one per game. This one, for example, has a new sea route that's between Australia. This one here is drought. The first person to pay 6 food gets 4 victory points. This cave area becomes a normal settlement area. Here you put 10 food on the card. It's a settlement area with some rules changes. So this will change from game to game. Now, when the game ends, when that last settlement's built, everyone is going to score points. You'll have scored points during the game for finding fire, and there's some other ways to score points. But also, each settlement you have is worth a point, and then whoever has the majority in each area is going to get points, a victory point for having that majority. And players will get points at the beginning of the game. They'll be given a task card. So this just says, for example, I get a majority for each, I get an extra point for each majority next to a forest. Whoever has the most victory points is the winner of the game. It's interesting that the game has almost like an old timey-wimey feel to it. The board is very well done, looks great, it's good. Everything's very clear, but these huts, which look like they come from some of the old Euro-style games that are out there, like there's a game called Clans. These huts look like they came from that. And the board itself and flipping over the tokens. The components are fine. The rules are pretty simple and easy to understand. There's an appendix that tells you what the special abilities are and go over the different inventions. And then there's the cave cards. It's kind of funny how much of the rules talk about a card that might not even show up in the game if you don't find the cave thing. And also it's kind of weird. You have this big deck of cards here for caves, but you use one per game. But I'm pretty happy with the components for the most part. All right, so there's something. I have mixed feelings on this. I'll just say straight out at the beginning, I like the game. It's a game I think that people should check out. And I think some of me going, some of this feels like older style games. Many people, for those of you watching, haven't played a lot of these older style games, and so this might feel fresh and interesting to you. There's a lot of things about this that I enjoy. Let me explain something I don't enjoy. Well, not that I don't enjoy, but I feel like meh, and that's the cave, right? The cave is cool. You find the cave token, there's a rule card in the game. But it's like one rule card. It does one thing. I almost wish there was 3 caves on the board. I shouldn't say almost. I do wish that. It feels like there's this one mechanism, which is neat, and it may not even show up in a game, and it may not even be that interesting because you don't know what the card is. Some of the cards are just like, hey, it's another settlement. Well, that's not that exciting. But if there was 3 caves or something, I just feel like that mechanism feels like it's cool, but is wasted. The technology victory point section, that I do like. I like the technologies, whether they're, hey, it's cheaper to put out a settlement, or you can move on to sea routes or whatever. Those are fun. And at the beginning of the game, you get these technologies, you want to use them. Or you can take a victory point card and put it on top. And you want those victory point cards because victory points are a big deal in this game. There's not a ton of victory points in the game, but it takes away that technology from you. That's a good, juicy choice to have to make. That's great. And then, of course, there's discovery. This Claus Jürgen Raid is good at this sort of thing. You're going out flipping tiles over. What are you going to find? It doesn't really matter where you go, but on the board itself, it does show you how many villages and fires are in each area, so you might want to go to those spots. The building up your bag, getting lots of food, controlling majorities. So I enjoyed that. The little thing that each player has, get 1 point for each majority you have next to a mountain. Well, they're not that many points. I find them to be wasted. If you took them out of the game, I would not care. There is starting technologies that you can play with. I think you should. Why not start with the technology? It gives you a slight different advantage over everybody else. But you got to go in realizing that this is a fairly light game. That's not necessarily bad at all, and it's easy to get into, and it's easy to teach, and like I said, this wonder of exploration is going to be fun. Now, I do wonder how long of legs this game is going to have. Like, how many times are people going to play it before you go, yeah, I've kind of seen everything. You might be like, but the cave, well, yeah, again, that's one card, and it shows up about halfway through the game, and then might affect the game maybe 2-3% of what goes on in the game. So I think with some tweaks, this could have been even better. As it is, though, it's a solid game. It's one that I would play. It's one I would enjoy, and especially if you're playing with people, maybe people who are new to board gaming or do not want a rules-heavy game, this one works really well in that regard. You don't have to know a lot. In fact, when you teach people this game, just say move, flip a tile over, and I'll tell you what it does. And then once that gets figured out, the game plays pretty smoothly. It's also fairly quick. We're talking 45 minutes. It scales well, so check it out. That's Fire and Stone. I'm Tom Vasel, and you've been watching the Dice Tower. Dice Tower Judgment approved!